Hey guys, I'm so excited to come on and let you know that I have created a free journal template for you. Badasses build boundaries. Boundaries have been essential to me in my healing journey, and I know they can do the same for you. It's when we say no to the things that don't serve us that we're really able to be true to who we authentically are and who we are looking to become. So go into the show notes or go to my website, jessieblois.com, to find the link and download your copy today. I'm here today with Jenna Hermans, and I'm thrilled to have you on the podcast, Jenna. Jenna is living proof that you can create a life of calm within chaos and overwhelm. She uses her bachelor's degree in psychology, master's degree in organizational management, and over 15 years of human resources experience to build strong teams, both at work and at home. Jen is the co-founder of Be Courageous, a busy mom of four, a coach, and an author. I'm tired just reading that. As seen in Forbes, The Sun, Entertainment Tonight, Yahoo, and more, Jenna takes an intentional and inclusive approach to developing life hacks that help others go from chaos to calm, which doubles as the title of her newest book that launched this month. And it's a great book. Jenna, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Jessie. It's such a pleasure. I'm so excited for us to connect. I love that we already know, we have so much in common already.
We do. And I'm so excited for us to connect too, because I feel like everything that you're putting into this world, I support it. I love it. I think it's so important to get this message across and to find ways to empower other women. And you're doing that. And I think it's incredible. I have just, we'll get back to your book, but I just want you to know I got sent your book and I started reading it. And yes, does it cover so many important things about motherhood and life? Absolutely. But like, you're so funny doing it. And you can just feel your personality coming through. And then I was like, oh, I'm gonna like this. I'm gonna get into this because the book has character and personality, and it feels like we're talking or hearing straight from you. So nicely done. I really enjoy it.
Thank you. That was definitely an intentional approach for this book, that it feels like you're talking with a friend, that there's someone who's in the trenches, knows what you're going through, add some humor, and make all of the content really relatable.
Right. Someone's not just telling you, do this, but they're actually connecting with you. And I feel like your humor is similar to mine in our language and our personality. So I'm reading it. I'm like, oh, this is my type of woman. Loved it. It's a great book. It's called, here, guys, I'll show it to you. I think Jenna has it in her background, but it's called Chaos to Calm. And it's great. You should definitely get it. Okay, Jenna, let's start from the beginning because as I was telling you before I hit record, I really like to talk about childhood. Um, as I grow and as I talk to so many other people, our childhood really shapes us, whether it brings out our strengths or it's our challenges and what we're trying to reflect on and release. It really helps create who we are. So will you give us a little bit of background about your childhood and who makes you Jenna?
Absolutely. So I grew up not far from where you live now in Southern California. I'm a Valley girl through and through, born and raised. My parents split when I was 2, and I started going between 2 different households at a pretty young age, which definitely dictated a lot of my experience and choices as I got older, as you know deeply about. So just having that family dynamic from the very beginning was a big part of who I've become. Additionally, on my mother's side specifically, I have a very large family, a lot of cousins and aunts and uncles and lots of people. So a big community, something that became very important to me, or something I realized, right? A value that now is important to me is having a community of people around, whether it's intentional or built in because it's your family. Who do you have around you to support you and your core and your family, right? So big family, multiple households, living in Los Angeles, left LA to go get out of the bubble, which is LA, left to go to school in Northern California. So went far enough away where it was different, but not so far. Didn't go across the country, right? Didn't need like this big exodus. And that going going to Davis, which is where I went to school, UC Davis, that shifted my perspective so much in realizing, yes, I was in a bubble in Los Angeles. And that's where my mind really expanded. Even as diverse as Los Angeles is,
LA.
it's unique.
Yeah.
It's LA, and it's a very unique place, and it's unlike anywhere else in the world. So leaving was incredibly eye-opening and kind of like just a worldly experience in of its own.
Yeah. No, I
micro-
agree. I went to school in Northern California as well, and it's the energy and the mentality is just very different than what we experienced growing up down here close to the city. Okay, I want to go back to your parents divorcing at 2. Are you an only child?
I'm an only child between the two of them.
Okay.
They each have their own children with with their partners.
Okay. So my brother, my parents got divorced. He's the youngest of us, but he was 18 months. And his experience from that is like he just has no memory of married parents. Is it similar for you?
Yeah, I remember meeting people, as you get older and you talk about family dynamics, and I moved schools at 4th grade, meeting people for the first time, and they're like, wait, your parents are divorced? Do you ever wish they were back together? How is that for you? And I'm like, I don't know. How's it like for you having your parents together? I know nothing different. This is the only reality I've ever had. So
Right.
it's not like, to me, growing up that way, it didn't feel like there was this big disruptive experience that then was traumatic and shifted my safety of the world or my perception of what family dynamics look like and how to trust people and those core relationships. It was nothing like that. If anything, it expanded for me the amount of love that one could feel in the relationships that entered life later with their partners and watching them get married and have children. And it was more of for me, I guess, also maybe a social experiment, the way I looked at it with curiosity of, that's how some people do it. That's how some people do it. And thankfully I had psychological safety so that I could be present to experience all of it and not feel unearthed by witnessing these very different experiences.
So that makes me think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that they separated in a healthy way and you were the priority? Because
yes, I believe so.
Okay, because
I believe so. And definitely there's definitely a lot to uncover in that, or there's a lot that's under the soil.
Episode. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But overall, I felt loved by both my parents through the process.
That's great. And then you watched them build other families, so then you were able to be a part of the birth and the happenings of new beginnings.
To varying degrees. Yes.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So then you grew up down here, you go to Davis, and you said your mindset shifted when you got there. What shifts? What happened? What was what were you exposed to that you were like, this is different?
It was for the first time I felt like a minority. Growing up in Los Angeles, I am Jewish by birth and culture. And when you're in Los Angeles, there's so many other Jewish people around. The community is huge. So leaving LA, going literally anywhere else, all of a sudden I felt, oh yeah, I'm a minority here. Majority of people around me are not Jewish. And some people have never met a Jewish person in their entire existence. And I was the first Jewish person they ever met. So that alone was a huge eye opener of, I'm not just the norm, right? That part of me is not the norm.
So here, this will blow your mind. I grew up in Thousand Oaks, which is 15, 20 miles from where you grew up. And I was like the only Jew. I know.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So yeah, just a couple towns over, it was like not until we got into like Agora, Calabasas that there's a Jewish population. So I always felt like the minority growing up, but I was just in Thousand Oaks. It's not wild. I know it's wild. Okay, so then you're in Davis, you're having all these experiences. What were you studying?
I was studying psychology.
Okay, so you knew you were interested in humanity. And then do you shortly after that meet your husband? Or do you go to work? What's the next part for you?
Oh no, I went to work. I went to
Okay,
work.
so what
I
was
took
that?
night classes. Like I definitely wanted to build my life, so to speak. And or
Uh-huh.
I mean that's a very subjective definition of me wanting to stand on my 2 feet. My family, my upbringing was very much about, especially on my mother's side. My grandfather moved here from India with his wife, and they started with nothing and built up a life. And so it was ingrained in me from a very young age that you need to build up your independence and be able to stand on your own 2 feet. So very strong work ethic, very high value placed on education. So after I was done with Davis, moved back to Los Angeles, started working, started going to school at night, and then continued working until I went to go get my master's degree. And while I was in my master's program and running a preschool at the time, that's
Oh,
when I met
wow.
my husband.
Okay, so is your master's in psychology as well?
No, my master's in organizational management.
That's cool. Okay, so how did you figure out you wanted to do I wouldn't even know that's an option for a master's degree.
So it kind of happened in a very serendipitous way. I started going into HR again, kind of in the universe, just kind of pulling it all together.
Well,
Because
and
my
I
first
love
job,
when things happen that way. That's
yeah,
right. That's when you know it's good, when it's just kind of organically evolving.
yeah, it just happened. So
Yeah.
my first job out of college was working at a preschool. And I loved being in the classroom, but I preferred being in the office. So I spent more of my time
Oh,
doing the behind the scenes, but I loved being in the field of education. That just lit me up. And being with small children in that age range in the early childhood development phase is something that just makes me so happy. It's such a beautiful age. So was doing back end work, which is where I found my sweet spot. And then when I left the school pursuing other to do different things, I thought I wanted to go into corporate environment and got my
okay.
first administrative assistant job assisting the, oh my gosh, the VP of, I can't even remember what her title was, but it was in the HR umbrella as the administrative assistant to this huge VP. And that job was it was a very short stint in that job. She got let go. So no more assistant needed for her. Looking for jobs again, got connected with the HR director at an apparel company. And they're like, oh, you've been doing some HR. Why don't you come work over here in our HR department? And so it just kept going in that way that all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I guess I'm in human resources
Yeah,
now.
you were being led.
Yeah. And it was such a generous experience, right? It was just so natural and organic that it didn't seem like I needed to shift course. It's not like it didn't feel good. It was like, no, this feels like a very nice natural step. And while at that organization, I realized, maybe this is where I want to do my master's. I want to do it in business, but I want to do it from the human side of business, not from the strategic or like
Yeah.
what people call the hard skills of business. I prefer the soft skills, psychology, right? Let's go back to
Yeah.
that. So that's where I started looking up what are master's degrees that are in business, but that have that human element focus. And that's where I found organizational management.
Cool. So where did you do that?
I did that in Los Angeles at Antioch University. It's a
Okay.
very small private school, very niche in what they offer.
That's very cool. Okay, so you have this really well-rounded background. Did you at that point, because how old were you at this point?
I started my master's degree, I want to say 24.
Okay, so you're a baby at this point. Did you have this idea in your head of I'm going to get this master's degree and then this is what I'm going to do with my life? Did you have a vision then, or you were open?
Yeah, it's totally open. I had no idea what the future was going to hold, but I was ready for the ride. I just wanted to experience the ride and figured wherever it's going to go, I trust. I trust that it's going to take me to a great place.
How did you learn to build that trust muscle? Is that something you've always had? Or is that something that you've done the work to understand that it's all going to be okay? Because I think for me, I haven't always had that trust muscle. It's been a lot of anxiety and overwhelm trying to force my vision to take place. And a lot of times that's taking a square peg and trying to put it in a round hole. But life really does do what it needs to do if you trust. So for me, that's called like letting go. I mean, Jenna, I have the word trust on my body. I put it on my body because it's my everyday reminder. Did that naturally come to you, or is that something that you very intentionally are like, I'm going to trust the process? And by the way, when you said ride, you did this and up and down, because you couldn't be more correct. It's a roller coaster. And when you're on a roller coaster and trusting, that's skill, right? That's a skill.
You know, I think that it's been innate, and that because I don't ever remember needing to practice that as a child. Like, I need to trust that everything's going to be okay. It just was. But that trust has definitely been rocked, you know, as different life experiences have shown up, that in that roller coaster, as things have gone down, I'm like, ooh, okay, is it going to be okay? And, you know, it's definitely, you know, especially in the earlier years. And then as a parent, that, I mean, the rockiness of trust has, you know, earthquakes. I mean, we're in California, so earthquakes, lots of earthquakes, but the underlying theme of trust has always been there. Yeah.
I love that you have that innately built into you. But let me ask you, because I think this applies to parents, business owners, humans. What do you do for you when that trust is getting rocked? How do you bring it back to center so that you don't lose your mind?
Yeah.
Or do you? I mean, I've been known to lose my mind.
Yeah,
what
I've
do
lost
you
my
do?
mind.
Yeah.
I've definitely lost my mind, but then I come back, I lose it, and then I find it again, and then we get back on track.
Yeah.
Right. There are definitely moments where that shakiness has led to losing my mind. And that's kind of where the book came from, or rather the beginnings of why I wrote this book were because I had lost my mind. I had totally lost myself, my identity, my connection with self and purpose, and all of it was gone. But so the things that I did before, after, now have to do with journaling. I do a lot of journaling to get back to me. I also find that connection with nature, and I go like this because there's a window outside and I have trees and whatnot outside the window there. So all my gesturing is to things outside of view. But getting back into nature and feeling and being reminded that our existence as a human being is actually so small. We're just tiny little ants on a log doing our thing, right?
Yeah.
And so to see that my problems are not that crazy compared to what else is happening in the world, and are insignificant truly to the greater universe. And it's when I remind myself of my humanity and my mortality, and realizing this is just a temporary moment, and this too shall pass, and I'm connected to the bigger picture, then I can move forward again.
I think that's really powerful. It reminds me of a quote I heard actually just the other week. It said, a healthy person has a million wishes. An unhealthy person has one. And it really stopped me in my tracks. And it's true. And that really brings you back to how big is this problem, right? How much is there? I hate to tell people, just be grateful. But really, like, how much is there to actually be grateful for in the scope of it? And then being able to access that trust muscle, having it strong enough that even when you're not in it, you can find it is really important. Okay. So you're building your career. I'm trying to get us to this part where you meet your husband and then you instantaneously become a mom of three. Talk to us about that.
Oh, Yes, that was a big part of the roller coaster. Um, so meet my hubby. We are friends at first, actually. We spend months just being friends. And in that time, I've met the kids, I've gotten to know him so well. He's gotten to know me so well. Relationship then shifts from friendship to romantic. And there's already so much love and trust there because there's that friendship foundation. And growing up being a stepchild myself on my mother's side and on my father's side, I had relationship with the concept of step parenthood and stepchildhood.
Yeah.
So that helped dictate my choices in how do I approach my own stepmotherhood with these three children. And reminder, so I ran a preschool and
Right.
my first job was in preschool. I love the early childhood ages. The kids at the time, his three children, were all in that age group. So I just loved hanging out with them because in addition to being great kids, they're also in this sweet spot of, I mean, at the time, the youngest was 1, but from 1 to 4, and it was just a blast. It was so much fun.
So they're the age that you just kind of thrive on, but then you also really did have that ability. If the youngest was 1, they experienced something really similar to what you experienced, which is not super common. So you were really able to step in. So you started dating how long till you got married?
So, math time. So we met in 2011 and we got married 2014.
Okay.
So 3 years.
Okay. So you have now these 3 little guys that you're raising.
Mm-hmm.
And then you added 1 more to the bunch.
Yep. Then we made a person and now we are fully rounded. We've got 2 girls, 2 boys, everyone ages 6 to almost 16. We are complete.
You are complete. Okay, so what was the time span between not having children to having 4?
So, met my husband 2011. I think, I started really getting into their lives the next year, probably, like as we're dating. I'm
Sure.
not raising them yet, but starting to maybe spend some time alone and be with them, and started more being another guardian or supportive adult in their lives, shortly after, because as any intentional adult should, I would think, hope would do with a young child is be a nurturer from the beginning.
Right.
So, and being that has been my role in my MO since forever, that's just how I showed up from the beginning with them. And then we moved up to the Bay in 2014, about 6 months after we got married. And then they were living with us full time shortly after that. And the baby came into the world in 2016. So it all happened in just 5 years that
That's
it
fast.
went from I'm childless to I have 4 children.
Yeah, that's a huge change. And you moved to a city, right? Where you didn't really have that community and you're so used to a big family and a lot of people around you. So these are really uncharted times. Did you feel excited and invigorated? Did you feel nervous and scared? Did you feel all of the above? What was that experience like?
It was like emotional whiplash of I'm so excited for what's to come and the life we're going to build and what we're going to do here. And also sadness, isolation, resentment. The feelings were all over the place, leaving my family, my friends, my community, this place that I called home forever.
With 4 kids where you need more support than ever, right? Because now you're raising 4 humans.
Mm-hmm. And that when we moved up here and had no built-in support system, that was one of those places where I got lost. That's where I became really, really lost. Where that whiplash of I'm single and I've got my life together, I'm getting my master's degree, I run a business and I'm doing my thing. I have no responsibilities to, I have 4 children and need to kind of build and continue my career somehow. My husband's traveling a lot for work. Like it was these two different people, and I didn't know who she was while I was in it. And then I'm like, wait, but her.
Right. So you're
Right? Like,
also, you have this loss, right? Of this life that you've known. And I guess unless you're having triplets, all of us, when we enter into parenthood, it feels like such a shift, and you grieve a life that you've known for so long, but you did it instantaneously with three. When you were going through that time, he's traveling, you're working, and you have four. I can't, I'm trying to like kind of just sit and wrap my head around it. Were you finding a way to take care of yourself during this time, or were you not? And that's what this book is more about. Like, it's kind of like your love letter to women who are in that moment saying, here, let me help guide you because I didn't know what to do.
it's the latter. It's definitely the latter. Because I was so when we moved up here, I was working full time, traveling husband, three kids. After we had the fourth, 6 months later, we started our own business. We started Be Courageous.
Okay. I
And
was going to
it,
ask when that came into the picture.
yeah, so that was while our youngest was 6 months old, that we're like, let's do this. Let's jump off the cliff and see if the net appears, or
Yeah.
if we have wings, let's see if we can fly. We don't know. And that it was during that transition from I'm no longer in corporate, I'm no longer working for something that has, that I have meaning and purpose that I go to every day. And I've got three kids, now a baby, and I wasn't immediately going back to work right afterwards. I was taking my 3 months, taking my 12 weeks. And in that time, I didn't want to think about work. I just wanted to be present for the baby and the kids and for our new experience. And in that's when everything collapsed for me. And it all imploded of, I don't know who I am, what I'm doing, what am I here for? I in that transition to becoming a biological parent, and supporting and nurturing and feeding a child with my own body,
Yeah.
as I think all of us mothers go through, it's such a transition.
Well, and not to mention all the hormones pumping through your body and your healing from the birth. It's such a transition. And then for someone who's used to working and being busy and being amongst adults, not only is all this happening, but now you're not having conversations all day long, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're only having child conversations. And for my brain, that was really hard
Mm-hmm.
to not have that outside influence to stimulate me, because then it's good to hear your thoughts if you can do it in a healthy way, but I got wrapped up in my thoughts, and I had severe postpartum depression as I was navigating through all that. So do you think any part of that, just everything combined, is what really made you feel lost? Or can you pinpoint like, no, it's this aspect of that experience where I got lost?
It was a accumulation of all of these different experiences and intentional choices or unintentional choices over those 5 years that
Mm-hmm.
led to that point of being lost in the woods. It wasn't one specific thing. It was more of that journey and getting wrapped up in this new life that I've chosen, but didn't
Mm-hmm.
understand the true implications of. I did not, I don't think anyone really can, right? Going from being a
Yeah.
non-parent to a parent, going from being a non-parent to a step parent, being a single person to being a married person, going from having community all around to having nobody and feeling isolated, to having a job and a purpose to then not. It was there were so many fundamental pillars and infrastructures that again got shaken. It's like it put it all and just it's like here's this new thing and I'm like, I don't know
Yeah,
what I'm
and
doing.
know how to navigate it.
Mhm.
So, did you naturally find your way through it, or did you intentionally say, I need to seek out help?
It was an intentional decision, and it started because I noticed that my body could not handle the situation I was in. I was having panic attacks, anxiety attacks. My nervous system was shot. The wind would blow the wrong way and I'd start crying. The overwhelm was palpable in me. And there was one specific day I remember, and I think I wrote about this in the book, that I was the breast pump was on because the littlest and we had some disagreements around breastfeeding. So it was pumping and having yet another panic attack. And it was in that moment, or right as I came out of the panic attack, that it occurred to me. It's like this lightning bolt hit me that I have so many tools in my tool belt on how to manage this whole scenario in a better way. And that was the moment that I made the choice to do it differently, to be more intentional and with my actions and behaviors in the home and for myself, to set myself up for success so that I could be a better parent, that I could be a better partner, that I could go back into the workplace, whatever that looked like, with a sense of calm and groundedness, knowing that this is all taken care of. So I needed to lay down that infrastructure for myself. And that's what I started doing from that moment on, was how can I do that?
So what did you do?
So I thought about, what's the first thing that I need to do right now that would make my stress levels lower? And that first thing was meal planning. I was like, we need to eat all the time. The kids are constantly needing to eat. Dinner happens every day for all the people through the rest of life. And that's one of those moments in the day that brought me stress every single day. What are we going to have for dinner? I don't know. It's like this question that it's going to happen every single day, but it comes as a shock.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Oh my God, it has to happen now. But so-and-so needs me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I'm like, if I can get just dinner figured out, then that'll relieve so much stress in every single day.
Okay. So first was meal planning.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're also like making lunches, right?
Yes.
Okay.
But I didn't find that as stressful.
I have to tell you, that's one of like my least favorite things to do ever. I don't know why. I just don't like having to make lunches. I mean, if we're at home and it's the weekend, I don't mind. It's just the prepping the lunches, first of all. Okay, what was next? Well, let's talk. So your book is broken down into 5 main areas: efficiency, habits, community, communication, and self-care. So were these the 5 areas that you in this moment started to look at, and that's why you wrote about them? Is that how it worked?
No, the way that it worked was that I just started doing things. I just started implementing things like meal planning and exercise and, like meeting new people. And through that, I started writing these things down, actually. Like, what are these little things that I'm doing? Because I started getting asked, like, what are you doing that you're managing 4 kids and a business, and, your husband travels and you seem to have it somewhat together, and you have no family around and no community, you don't have hired help. So
you didn't have hired help? Okay, see, I don't understand.
I had hired help for a very small stint of time, but it was not for long at all. And we don't have any hired help now. We haven't had hired help for years.
So you just do what you can when they're in school?
Mm-hmm.
I like it. I like it. Okay. All right. I'm processing. Okay. So people are asking you, what did you do? So you're starting to really look at like, what actually does this all break down as, and what were you finding?
I just was writing it. I didn't go into the theming of it yet or anything. I didn't put any pressure to reflect on it yet. I was just in a place of, let me get it down. Let me just write these things down as they come to me, as inspiration strikes, as I notice, oh, this is something that I do in my home, or a thought process that I go through that then helps me to be calm and show up as a better parent for my kids, as a better partner for my husband, as a better colleague for my colleagues, and as a boss to my employees and all of that. And so I just started writing it down. And after a year, felt complete. Felt like, oh, I've written it all down. I feel like I've got this. I feel this just like the family. I feel complete. It's all out there. And that's when the reflection happened. Okay, now that all of this is written down, let's assess and see what do we have here. And the 5 pillars came from that assessment.
I like it. Okay, so for someone who's a parent, they're in the business world and they feel this chaos, they can read the book and they can read the 5 pillars, but if you were like, okay, stop, hold on, let me help you right now. You're going to start, these 3 things are going to be where you focus first on organizing your life. What would those 3 things be?
Well, it's different per person. I would ask questions like, what is the thing that causes you the most overwhelm and stress? What is something that if it was taken off your plate that you would feel so incredibly relieved? Like what's that one thing? Let's even list out a whole bunch, do a brain dump, and then go through and be like, no, this one more so than everything else. Like if that one went away, I would feel so much better. Right? Or what's another thing that you could add, which sounds like a lot, but what's one thing you could add into your life that would also bring you joy or stress relief? Whether it's a practice of journaling, of exercising, of breathing in nature, of meditating, of connecting with a friend once a week, or calling your mother, twice a week, or whatever it is. So I would say it depends on the person, right? And that's where I work with my coaching clients is we work through those things. Let's get that list out there, that brain dump, and slowly make our way through that list. Because what's interesting is that usually, right, one of the things at the top of the list, when that gets done, a lot of the other things start to go away, because all you need is maybe 1 or 2 to either be added or taken away. And the rest then don't feel so overwhelming anymore.
And then while you're doing this and you're writing these things down, your main focus is also be courageous and growing it. So did you guys come up with this vision together as a
my
couple?
husband, so he had the biggest vision of what Be Courageous was to be. And he and I are very aligned in our purpose, in our life purposes, and so he had the main vision for Be Courageous, and I was just on board. I'm like, that resonates. I'm so down. Let's do this together. And we have very complementary skills. So it worked out for us that he could lead in the execution of the vision, of the purpose, of our mission. And I could be in that supportive role of operations, finance, HR, which is my sweet spot, where I spent over 15 years.
So you're able to then take your knowledge and your expertise and apply it to this business with your spouse. My spouse and I started working together in 2020, and people look at me a lot and they go, you work with your husband? Like, why? For us, it's the best thing that ever happened to our marriage. How is it for you working with your partner?
I love that we work together. I love that it brings another dimension to our relationship and has shown the cracks of our communication so that we can be even better communicators with each other. And what I appreciate is that we have a strong idea, because we've talked about this, around what are our roles and our responsibilities. So what is his, I can trust that he's going to get done his tasks, responsibilities, and strategy, what he's up to. And he trusts that I'm going to do my stuff, and that we're both doing it in a way where we don't have to step on each other's toes or micromanage or any of it, because again, complementary stuff. And we just know that we can communicate about if we have any questions or concerns or anything that shows up, we talk about it.
That's great. Yeah. I think it's definitely not for all. I can see how it's not for all, but for us, it was being on the same page and having the same goal and focus that really helped. I think it really helped the relationship as a whole. So you have and just timeline wise, you have these 4 children, and you're brain dumping and organizing and writing out this book that you're going to put together, and you're establishing and growing and running Be Courageous. When did you take time for Jenna? How did you intentionally fit that into your week, or did you just grab it when you could? I imagine it had to be really organized for you to find time for every single person and yourself, because you've mentioned like being a better mom, being a better partner, but at least my thought process is we can't be a better anything if we're not taking care of ourselves. And I don't just mean like hydrating and working out and eating. I mean like, who are we? Are we living the life we want to be living? Do we have a sense of finding inner calm and inner peace? So it's more than just checking a workout off your list, right? Like, how did you really take the time to take care of you?
Mm-hmm. That was very iterative, because when I had started writing, I didn't know that I was writing a book. I would just write when, again, I felt inspired. And so in that space, I had already started taking care of myself and taking care of my mental health, my spiritual health, my physical health. And that was very intentional. I am choosing to do that now. I'm choosing to do that. And in a lot of the times, it was the times in between, because I know my schedule, I know my process of what the day looks like. So I could fit those times in to make sure that I was taking care of me and noticing, what am I doing in those times? What are those things that are nurturing myself? And then writing those things down as I noticed them. Like, oh, so my journaling practice, journaling, let me write that down, is like, I use a journaling practice and here's what it does for me and why it's so important and why I think that everyone should have a journaling practice. Because it could look like just talking into your phone. That's journaling. Sure. Journaling doesn't always have to be, I'm sitting with a piece of paper and a pen and writing and it's like, that's definitely a practice as well. And something
journaling really is so powerful. I find when I journal, because it's a huge practice of mine, you just write shit that you didn't even know you thought or felt. It just pours out. And it's such like, sometimes now that I'm so used to doing it, I'll feel like this internal buildup that I know I need to journal to just like release and breathe deeper.
Yeah.
It's really
important. I
important.
find that journaling allows for the mental capacity to grow, because you're getting out all those thoughts and all of those things that are inside, you're getting them out. So you create space and neural pathways for new thinking, for new thoughts, to make connections for things that you wouldn't have put together originally, for things right, that wouldn't have had the space to show up because your mind was being consumed in those same thoughts that you've been thinking. So once you get them out, the brain can be like, sigh of relief, new thoughts showing up, new connections, creative problem solving, perspective, whatever it is, right?
Yeah,
but
perspective of, you need to get it out. And then when you're doing it too, you're just like, you have all these feelings and you don't really understand them. You haven't taken the time to really stop and fully hear them. You know they're there, but you're busy doing this. And when you're journaling, it's like, oh, maybe that heaviness was related to this, or, oh, this is really a dream of mine. And you're just giving yourself the permission to kind of release and let it all flow. And then I learn about myself things that they're just my thoughts. I'm just writing them down. They were probably my thoughts 5 minutes ago, but I didn't know. I didn't know they were in there until I just let it pour out. And my journal's a mess. Like, no one else could read it. I can barely read it when I go back and look at it. But a lot of times in the moment, I'll look and I'll be like, oh shit, like I had no idea. But thank God I just wrote it all down and let it come out. But that's really interesting what you say about creating space, because it empties all the commotion, and then you have more space for new thoughts, and you're calmer and more open for new thoughts. So were you always a writer though? Because it sounds like writing something that you do.
Yeah, I've been a writer, and I started a journal. I think the first journal that I found of mine was when I was maybe 9 or 10. I loved writing. I know. Oh my gosh. It's like, oh, I feel for little Jenna. She's adorable. I've been writing for a long time, and I didn't intentionally think that I was, oh, I love writing, so I'm going to write. It just happened naturally, where I enjoyed reflecting upon my thinking and enjoyed putting my thinking down and seeing what would come of it. And it started off like stories. Like, I was storytelling as a child. but and storytelling about my own existence. And then it moved into reflection of the stories as I was writing about myself, and my experiences of, oh, well, what does that mean? And what does that look like from different angles? And what could that do for my future? And just practicing the what thinking is when reflecting. It's like thinking about thinking, right?
Yeah.
And then it moved into, like, because I've always loved reading and writing, even after I was done with school, especially I remember in between college and going to junior college taking night classes, because why not? Because I'm a
You were
wacko.
just doing it for fun?
I started taking Spanish. That was my first class.
Are you bilingual now?
No.
Oh,
I also have very strong ADD. I start a lot of things with great intention and I follow through to the end, but I don't always maybe go to the next step of like, let me continue on my Spanish journey.
I was going to be so impressed if you're like, on the side, I became bilingual.
Well, I wanted to, because what was really something of interest to me was helping the underserved in Los Angeles who mostly speak Spanish. And so I thought, what if I learned Spanish? And I took a couple of classes. That was great. But then I got into grad school and did that. And that was enough. Right.
Right. You didn't want to do it all.
Classes at night. Yeah. No, some sort of sanity was left there for myself. But I lost track.
Wait, let me think.
Journaling,
I don't know.
writing.
I think we were talking about journaling.
I got it. I remembered. So in between going to undergrad and going to grad school, taking night classes, I'd be reading the news and articles around things. And I remember at my administrative assistant job, I'd print out these articles and then would journal against them and think, what does this bring up for me? And what do I think about this thing? And how does that relate to other things in the world, in my life? And I don't know. Again, I'm a wacko. So
this was just a practice you came up with on your own?
Yeah. It was like doing your news article assignments for elementary school.
Yeah.
Where you have to clip something out of the newspaper. Okay, I just dated myself. You clip out a newspaper article and then you had to write against it, right? And then turn that into your teacher and be like, look, I read this thing and this is how I internalized it and what it means and moving on. And so I did that my own like adult activity with that.
Wow. A big takeaway for me from our conversation right now is that your life is very intentional, but you've also just allowed it. You followed what you love and you've let it just naturally unfold for you.
Yeah. I love that. That's your synthesis because that resonates.
And I love it because I've spent so much of my life. I mean, I just turned 40, Jenna. And when I say so much of my life, I mean until 5 years ago, making my decisions based on what will make this parent happy. What will this person think? What am I not? It wasn't about me at all. And I'm trying to peel back those layers and figure it out. And now I'm talking to this woman who has trusted herself and her heart so much that from a young age, you just naturally let it unfold before your eyes. And that is beautiful.
Thank you.
I think it's inspiring to me to know that young people can have this ability, right? Because that's what I'm trying to instill in my own children and how I'm intentionally trying to raise them to trust themselves. Yeah. And I love to hear that happened for you as well. It's really powerful for me. I love it. It's really special. What's your future? I feel like you have so many things that are going on for you right now. Do you have like the next idea or are you letting life unfold for you?
It's a mixture of both. I have a lot of ideas, too many, not too many. It's the perfect amount. And they're just ideas, right? I'm not attached to any of them. And I also am willing and excited for things to reveal themselves and see where that path goes. So I'm going to keep walking along a path that is overgrown with foliage and keep macheting my way through and see what unfolds at the same time. What am I going to come upon as I am cutting down this path? I'm open. Let's see. But with intentionality, I know what I love and I know the general direction of where I want to go.
For anybody who's listening right now and they're getting started on whatever it is, parenthood, career, wanting to start a business, wanting to go back to school, do you have some words of wisdom or 3 pieces of advice or anything that you would share that you could give them no matter where they are in their life?
Mm-hmm. I'd say one is coming at whatever situation you have, or whatever crossroads or new place or transition that you're in, with curiosity, coming from a place of naivety, right? Of, you know, nothing about this, coming at it like a scientist, like, ooh, what is this? This is so interesting, right? Being able to look at it objectively with just open eyes, no judgment. And from there, be able to ask yourself, like, what does this mean to me? Is this important? Is it in line with my values? What is important to me? And be able to make an intentional choice from there, from a very pure, integritous place about what you want to do next.
I think that's really important. I think really, I just listened to a podcast a couple months ago about the importance of wonder. And you said curiosity, same thing, and how important that is in leading us. I think that's great advice. And I've really enjoyed this conversation with you. You're incredible and you're putting so much good into the world. So thank you. And thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you, Jessie. This was so much fun. And I'm just so grateful to have been here. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great Friday afternoon.
You too.